I just bought a 2006 Toyota Tacoma with a bad engine, and we're driving it 2,500 miles in less than a month. Let's start this journey. 4,500 mile trip, by the way. I don't know where I got 2,500 miles from. This is a 4,500 mile road trip. Supposedly, this thing needs a full engine rebuild. That's what the dealership told the previous owner. It does start up right now. It overheated. It got pretty hot. It's gonna need a bunch of engine work. But for now, we're gonna start it up. We're gonna drive it on the trailer and we're gonna get it home, because that's always step one. Sounds fine. $315, $339. This is epic. So this is the body damage. This, and this. I'm pretty confident that we can make it look at least a little bit better with just a little bit of time. All in all, I'm stoked. It's got a matching shell. Well, not matching color, but the shell matches the truck. And it's so clean in there. This is probably the cleanest Tacoma bed I've ever seen. No grime or grease or anything. There's dust. We finally got the Tacoma into the garage. Now we can start digging into it. I want to preface, I knew this thing would run and drive when I bought it, but I also was told it would need an engine. Not only was I told it would need an engine, but there is paperwork from a dealership that looked at this truck that said it would need a full engine rebuild or replacement. That is why I acquired this truck. It does technically need an engine, but I'm not going to be doing a full engine in it. Of course not. This thing is a 2.7 liter Toyota Tacoma, 2-wheel drive, automatic, really nothing special. It's a base model work truck. It wasn't really used as a work truck per se. It was used as a camping road tripper by the previous owner, which is exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be carrying on that legacy. It's got the 2.7 liter 2TR. It overheated pretty bad a couple times, so I'm sure there's some damage. Let's pop the hood, see what kind of damage there is, and I gotta get wrenching on this thing so I can get these parts to the machine shop, because it's Friday, time's a ticking, and machine shop's not open on the weekend. Oh wow, yeah, this thing got hot. So, you can see all of the splatter from where coolant definitely sprayed everywhere, and the radiator caps melted. Oh, we need a radiator. It melted a hole in the radiator. The steam going through was so hot, it melted a hole in the radiator. Wow, okay, this thing got hot. Hopefully this block isn't too damaged. I'm gonna start by pulling this intake off, and I wanna run a compression test on this thing. I wanna see what the health of the engine looks like. Hopefully all the numbers are fairly similar. They can all be a little low. I just don't want one to be like 0, because that would indicate there's a big issue. All right, we got the intake pulled off. I got all the spark plugs out. I went ahead and I pulled apart the fuse block and pulled the starter trigger off so I can signal that from in here so I can do a compression test without having to be in the cab. I don't like the threaded inserts. I had one get stuck in a head once. It wasn't very fun. I didn't enjoy it. So we're gonna do a compression test on all 4 of these real quick. Before I do that, I'm gonna make sure I have this propped open so it gets as much air as possible. And we get the most accurate compression test possible. Hopefully all 4 are similar. I really couldn't care. If they're 90 to 100 or above and all the same, or similar, I should say, I'll be happy. I'm not looking for perfect. It's a 315,000 mile engine, but I would just like to know if there's anything that's like crazy bad before I tear into it, because I could start sourcing an engine right now. $110. 105, 105, 100, So 100, 105, 105, 110. That's not terrible. They're all really within 10%, which is about what you're looking for. None of them are super low, like I said. 100's about what I was looking for. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna continue tearing this down. I gotta get the exhaust off, the wiring harness off. We got a ton to take off of this thing, and I have actually never worked on one of these engines. I think I found another issue with the cooling system on this thing. So, this fan, there's supposed to be not like a ton of resistance, but there's supposed to be resistance here, and there really isn't. It's not quite like horribly horrible, but I would not doubt this and a slightly bad water pump causing this thing to overheat. So we're gonna go ahead, and while we're doing all this, we need a radiator because it melted through the radiator. We need a fan clutch. I'm gonna make sure I get a water pump on this thing, the full head gasket kit, and that should be just about everything we need. We're also gonna have the head surfaced, so that's gonna be perfectly flat. Hopefully the block isn't too torn up or anything like that. We're gonna inspect everything. But just figured I'd update. I think that is also a probable cause of issue. All right, and we got the head off. Block's actually pretty well completely torn down, and super stoked. Everything was really clean. There was no big buildup anywhere. The top of the head is really clean. The bottom of the head's pretty clean. It doesn't look like there was a cylinder that was burning coolant. I accidentally pulled this sensor apart, which is pretty sad. That's the knock sensor. I'm actually really sad about that. I didn't realize I was doing that till I was looking at the head. But I didn't see any cracks in the head, and that is my honest biggest fear when I was pulling this apart, was that this head was gonna be cracked. I have 3 different 3RZ, 2RZ heads here that are cracked, and that's the predecessor to this engine. And I was just really worried this was also gonna have a head cracking issue, especially since this thing got hot. But we're gonna get a new head gasket in this thing. We're gonna get the head surfaced at the machine shop, and we're gonna clean the block up. All right, well, the head's at the machine shop, so I've got some time to kill, but I got these bucket seats off of Facebook Marketplace for 50 bucks. I actually bought these seats 2 days before I bought the truck. I kind of took a gamble. I was pretty sure I was buying the truck, and I figured for 50 bucks, the worst case scenario, I was at 50 bucks. They are definitely not perfect seats. You can tell, they're ripped. They're not pretty. I'm gonna clean them up, but I wanna see if they bolt in, because right now we've got a bench seat, which isn't terrible. The bench seat's actually kind of in better shape. It's not torn up, but bench seats suck. You know why bench seats suck? Because when you're on a road trip and you want to lean back, you can't. When you're on a road trip and the person driving is short, the person in the passenger seat has to have their knees into the dashboard. Yeah, they just suck. They suck for road trips. They really do. So since we're going to be road tripping this thing, this will allow us to lean back, scoot forward, scoot backwards, all independently of each other, and it's out of a Tacoma. Seatbelt should work perfect. The airbag light and everything should also still work perfect because these are seats out of a 2005 Toyota Tacoma. So super stoked. Hopefully it'll be a super simple and easy upgrade. I'm pretty sure there's mounting points for it in here. It feels like there are, but I'm probably gonna have to cut a hole in the floor carpet. So let's get into it. All right, and I think because I said this was going to be easy, the universe decided they were going to laugh in my face. These are the electronics for the seat that I'm putting in. This is the plug for the seat I took out. Very not the same. Same with the seatbelt harness. Like the two seatbelt harnesses I pulled out plug into each other, because that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm actually going to pull this seat out. I'm going to pull this seat out. And hopefully it's not too big of an issue, because, man, I'm pretty sad that this haul is different. These came out of an 05 Tacoma. This is an 06 Tacoma. It's just, I'm pretty sure, a two-wheel drive single cab thing versus a four-wheel drive double cab thing. So it's the next day. Last night I spent a ton of time doing some research, comparing some parts, looking up part numbers, and it seems as though in order to get these seats to work in the Tacoma easily, the easiest way to do this is going to be to take all of this and bolt it to this seat. I'm really hoping it's not going to be too big of an issue. The one thing I do have a question about is there is a wire going between the two seats that will have to go on the floor, I guess. And I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do there. I might try and run it under the carpet, but I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. That's the one part that I'm really not stoked about, is that this wire is going across and I don't want anything going in between the seats. Other than that, it's going to be a bit of a pain. This is the passenger seat sensor so that the passenger airbag works. And it's essentially a giant bag full of weird gel that pushes pressure into this little sensor that sends a computer sense to this computer that is an occupancy detection computer that then sends a signal to the truck to turn the passenger airbag on. Super complicated. You would think a bench seat in a base model pickup with crank windows would be simpler than this, but we're gonna have to get all of these computer modules moved onto the new seat, get all the wiring transferred over, and hopefully everything will function as it should. Last night I was pretty discouraged when I realized how much stuff needed to be transferred over and how hard it was going to be, but it is what it is. I really am confident that these seats are going to be an upgrade and that I'm going to like them better. We're going to go ahead, get working on it, and transfer everything over. We got all the wiring swapped over. I blasted this seat completely apart. I took all the sensors off. I took the passenger seat occupancy detector out. Everything is blasted off this. I took most of the wiring out of these seats. That's what all of this is all the wiring from the factory seat, the bucket seats. And this is the seat belts we're gonna have to use. Unfortunately, the seat belt buckles off of the bucket seats did not actually work. So we're gonna be using the floor mount from the bench seat. Shouldn't be a big deal. I took the entire bracket off so there's no like bolt or anything sticking out. And then the wiring. The wiring was a little bit of a pain. Mainly this occupancy sensor, I had to take this entire seat apart in order to push the padding out and slide that in without hurting anything, because it is full of fluid and I don't want to poke a hole in it. I had to get it routed to where this was coming out so that it could go to the sensor. And then I got all of the wiring zip tied in here. The computer for the occupancy detectors here. This is the sensor for how far forward the seat is. It's a magnetic sensor. From what I understand, zip tying it to the seat is gonna make sure that the lights don't go off. Pretty sure everything's done. I'm gonna then route all of this wiring under the carpet so it's not ugly in between the seats. And then after that, I'm gonna plug this passenger seat in, or the driver's seat in, sorry, from underneath. We got the seats fully installed. Both of them are there. We got the seat belts in. All 4 bolts are in both. And I actually just popped the hood because we're gonna throw a battery in this thing and see if all of the seat belt lights work. This is what I'm most nervous about. I'm nervous about the passenger seat either always registering there's someone in there or never. Okay, so what do we got going on? So we've got driver's side seatbelt. Plug the driver's side seatbelt in. Oh, look at that. It went away. All right, passenger side airbag. Says nothing. Pushing on the seat. Oh, the seatbelt and the airbag light are on. All right, let off. Takes a second. And airbag turned off. That went away. All right, plug it in and now push on it. Airbag on, no seatbelt light. Sweet! We actually got all of the electronics to work. I hid them under the carpet right here, so you can't see them. I am gonna look for a center console of sorts or something, because right now there's just some dead space. But all in all, I'm stoked. And really, I did all of this so that I could do that. No, not just for that reason, but I can scoot forward and lean back a little bit. And yeah, there's not a whole lot of room to lean back, but a couple degrees of leaning back makes a huge difference. And on top of that, now the passenger can be all the way back and I can be all the way forward. These still fold forward because they came out of a Tacoma, so you still get good access to everything behind the seats. I'm excited about this upgrade. It was a really good one. So now I can move on to, I'm gonna pull the rooftop tent off of the red Toyota turbo truck, and we're gonna see about mocking it up onto the camper shell. And here is our rooftop tent. It's currently mounted on my 88 turbo truck, but this thing is not great for road tripping. There's a lot of issues. The main's AC, and I just don't really necessarily want to drive a project car 2,500 miles with a turbo engine. I'm sure it would do it, but currently it's got a couple things I need to fix, and then I think this thing actually might end up going for sale. It just doesn't really have a purpose in my life. I love driving it, but that's the only thing I use it for. And I think if I just put a little bit of time and energy into the Hilux, I would be able to make something very similar that I would enjoy just as much. We're gonna get the tent over, we're gonna get it mounted up on here, and we're gonna see how everything feels in terms of how this shell is going to manage the weight. Just in case it doesn't manage the weight very well, I do have some square stock steel over there, some 1x1 that I can use to build a frame interior of the shell to support all of the tent. That way we're going down to the bed rails and we're not worried about busting this fiberglass. Not sure I'm gonna need it, but if I do, I wanted to have it. All right, we went ahead, we transferred the rooftop tent onto the Tacoma, and what a sight. This thing actually looks really good. I'm digging the way it looks. I think this thing has a ton of potential. The rooftop tent looks great, and I think it's gonna be stout enough. I'm not sure if you saw me jumping up and down on top of it, but it didn't feel like it was gonna fall through. And I've got these panels that went under it originally that already have rubber on the underside that go in between these and will span the distance on the tent. Hopefully that'll help everything stay good, stay off of the shell itself, and hopefully everything looks decent. Not sure how it's gonna look, I'm not sure how it's gonna bolt up. Hopefully it bolts up decent and doesn't like flatten the top of the shell or something crazy. But it is what it is. We're committing now, so I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get some holes drilled in this tent, make sure everything is squared up, centered, it looks good, and then we'll get some mounting hardware in there. I guess there's no going back now. Getting the drill out, and we're going to start punching holes in the shell of this camper. In this camper shell? I don't know. We're gonna punch holes in it. I'm gonna get that fabric out of the way. We're gonna pop a hole in this, we're gonna pop a hole in that, and I even have some spacers to hopefully give me enough room, yes I know these are nuts, to not rub in the center, at least not near as bad. All right, and we actually got the tent mounted up now. It seems to be nice and solid. I don't love the way it's mounted. It's like it's a 6 out of 10 for me. It's solid. I'm not worried about it falling. I'm not worried about it coming off. I use big old fender washers inside. I use the same hardware size that I've been using to mount it. But I had to space it up with these nuts in order to get it high enough to where it wasn't rubbing on the shell the whole time. I just don't love that. So it is what it is. It's mounted, it's solid. I got up there, I danced around. It didn't feel like it was gonna pop through the roof. It's been just about a week and we are back working on the Tacoma. So we have the cylinder head back from the machine shop and this thing is looking snazzy. Whew. So this thing is completely ready to put back on the engine, which means we're back to work on getting it ready. So we've got it back in the garage and we got our work ahead of us. So I need to clean up the cylinder block and we need to get everything cleaned up real nice, the head surface cleaned up real nice, all of the debris and everything out of there, and then we can put our MLS gasket on and our surface cylinder head. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get this hood propped up, I'm gonna get things cleaned up, and we're gonna get to getting this engine back together because now another week is burned and we are T-minus 2 weeks till I gotta take this thing on a 2-week road trip. So if we got it together today and drove it every single day for the next 2 weeks, we'd have an idea if it's reliable enough for a 2-week road trip. But I'm not too worried about it. It's a Toyota. These things are awesome. This thing seems to have been well maintained. The head isn't cracked. There's no issues with the head, so that's all good news. I'm gonna get into working on this thing. I better get to it. All right, it's the next day. Last night, we got a ton wrapped up. We got the entire valve train on, assembled, squirters, cams, rockers, lifters, everything. We've got the timing chain on, everything is torqued down, the tensioner's on. We turned this thing over a ton just to make sure everything was in time. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start wrapping up this engine. In order to do that, first thing I need to do is I need to get this timing cover on. A ton of fasteners, a ton of gray RTV. We're gonna be coating all of this. We've got 4 different O-rings and like 15 fasteners. Shouldn't be terribly terrible, it's just gonna be a little bit tedious. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna start putting those in and we're gonna get this engine the rest of the way wrapped up. There's no reason we don't have a running Tacoma by the end of today. It's bright and early and we've got an entire day ahead of us, so. All right. Got the front of the engine all put together. We got a ton of stuff back on this thing. Timing cover's on there. Everything is ready to go. We're about to put the valve cover back on so we can start draping this wiring harness over it and not worry about a bunch of stuff going into the valve cover and all these galleys. Then we can finish putting all these accessories on, throw the intake on. We've got new gaskets in the intake, new gaskets on the valve cover, and we're pretty darn close to having this thing fired up. So I'm getting pretty fired up with the progress. We've gotten a ton done this week, and it's time to put our head back down and get this last little bit done, get this thing fired up so we can start driving it around and make sure this engine is in tip-top shape before our road trip. This is the old fan clutch, and it's not very stiff. And this is one I had lying around that is a lot stiffer. So what I'm gonna be doing is I'm actually gonna be throwing this one on. I'm gonna be tossing this one. Since this thing had overheating issues, I just don't wanna risk it. The water pump looked like it had been replaced. Putting a new fan clutch on it, new head gasket, it's getting a brand new radiator. The cooling system is gonna be completely gone through, so there should be no reason whatsoever this thing doesn't run nice and cool. So for now, I'm gonna continue. I've just about ready to throw the radiator, fan, and belt on. That'll wrap up the front. I've got a little bit more wiring. The transmission wiring harness needs to be routed. Spark plugs, coil packs, intake. This thing is this close to a fire. We're really coming up to the final stretches, so I'm gonna get back to it. We're gonna put this new fan clutch on, finish up the wiring harness, and this thing will be firing up in literally probably just a few minutes. Look at this. We've got everything wrapped up. We've got it full of oil. We've got it full of coolant. We've got the intake on. We've got everything together. So I think it's time to fire it up. I put the battery in, and let's see how this thing does. Oh, oil pressure light's already off. Look at that. Sounds decent. It's got coolant. Oh, it sucked that coolant down. I'm gonna go throw some more coolant in it. It's got oil. This is awesome. All right, so we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna take this 2TR Tacoma for a little bit of a cruise and see how she does. I actually never drove it before the head gasket, so I don't really have a ton to compare to. But I do know that it should drive decent. It's an 06 and it just got a ton of work. This thing does great. It drives super straight. There's no major issues. And the AC cranks, which is the best part. I forgot that when I bought this thing, the previous owner had said that cut the catalytic converter out. So I'm gonna go dig through my pile of exhausts, find a Toyota catalytic converter and weld it in. But other than that, this thing is, I'd say a solid 8.5, 9 out of 10. We've got the Tacoma back in the garage, and we have one more major fix for it, an exhaust. The previous owners had a clogged catalytic converter. Instead of fixing it properly, they just cut it out and put a straight pipe in. That's not gonna fly for us. Few reasons. One, I don't like the gassy exhaust smell. Two, I don't want any check engine lights. And three, the most important, I need to register this thing. In order to register, it's got to have a catalytic converter. It's also got to have no check engine lights. So we're going to be taking care of all of that all at once. We're going to be putting this exhaust in. It's not a full exhaust, actually. We're just putting the catalytic converter in. So I'm going to get to putting this thing in, cutting that out, and hopefully solving our check engine light issue. Audio didn't work on this clip, but we finished up the exhaust. We got everything put back together and welded up. The truck sounds good, and we're gonna go ahead, jump in, and clear all of the check engine lights. That way, this thing has got no emissions codes. All right, first merge onto the highway. I think I just had the worst realization I've had in a long, long time. There's no cruise control. I bought a car for a road trip with no cruise control. I'm so upset with myself right now. No! We got the Tacoma inspected, emissions tested, registered. It is now a fully road legal vehicle. And with that, we need to address a few things that are going on with it. So we're about to take this thing on a 4,500 mile trip, by the way. I don't know where I got 2,500 miles from. This is a 4,500 mile road trip. I have no clue where 2,500 miles came from, but that is almost double, and I just want to put that out there. This is actually going to be a 4,500 mile road trip. All right, one of the last things we need to do to this thing before we're comfortable taking it on a 4,500 mile road trip is wheels and tires. So the wheels are actually fine, but these tires are matching. They are way better tread than what I've got on the truck, and they have good tire pressure monitoring systems. The ones in the wheels now are no good. I picked these up off Craigslist for 150 bucks, great deal. So I'm gonna go ahead, throw them on, relearn the tire pressure monitor systems, and that is going to take care of wheels and tires. Then I won't be worried about a flat on a nearly 5,000 mile road trip. All right, and one of the last things we got to do on the interior is these seats are pretty torn up, and since we're going to be putting quite a few miles on, getting in and out a bunch, we got some seat covers that we're going to throw over. They're nothing super fancy, some fairly cheap seat covers, but we're going to cover both the front seats. And that's funny, Amazon's here with my cruise control switch, and that's why the steering wheel is torn apart, is because we're actually going to be installing cruise control in the Tacoma. So that's super exciting. I'm gonna get to doing that. We're gonna get this interior completely dialed. We've got the camper shell set up for the dogs, and we're almost there. This is supposed to be our cruise control. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get this box open with one hand. This is not what I ordered. Well, I just filed a complaint and reordered the part I need because I didn't order a spark plug for a small engine. I ordered a cruise control stock for an 05 Tacoma. Whatever, it is what it is. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna throw these seat covers on, and maybe in 2 or 3 days, I'll get another switch, and maybe this one will actually be a switch for cruise control. And supposedly, the internet says it's a plug and play operation, and you just plug it into the existing harness already built into the ECU, and you have cruise control, which would be awesome. Look at this. Yeah, they might not be the nicest seat covers in the world. They might not even be your cup of tea, but seat covers are a really nice way to make sure that all of the grime that you're sitting on for 2 weeks is going to be your grime and not some stranger's grime, because these are random seats I got off Marketplace in a random truck I got off Marketplace. So I might as well try and make sure that it's as clean as possible. We've got the new wheels and tires on. We've got them all torqued down. We've got seat covers on. Cruise control was wrong, which is sad. We've got a thermometer mounted in the shell so that we can monitor the temperature of the shell from inside the cab. And that's also mounted in the cab. It's actually really cool. So you can see that outside is the camper shell, it's 90, and it's 92 in the cab. It's actually cooler in the shell than it is in the cab right now. So, pretty nifty little addition, and I think that's really worthwhile for anyone that has dogs that travel in a camper shell. It's nice to know how they're doing. One of the things that we haven't done since we put the tent on the truck is actually pop the tent out and see how it looks. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. We just pulled out into my backfield. We're just gonna see how it holds up, see how it feels with 2 people in the tent on the shell, because I don't know if this shell was ever really designed to carry this much weight. And really, I just would like to see what it looks like set up. So we're gonna set the tent up, see how everything feels, and get some cool shots of the tent on the Tacoma. I'm super stoked. The camper shell did not seem to care one bit that the tent was there. Tent's awesome. We went ahead, we took the rain fly off just to check it out. I haven't done that in the entire time I've owned the tent, and super stoked. So we're gonna wrap this up, and I will catch you when I continue working on the Tacoma. All right, and look what finally came in the mail. We got our cruise control switch, which is just a, I guess, factory standard cruise control switch for pretty much every Toyota from like 2001 to 2023. So very, very common part. I went ahead and I've got my airbag unbolted so I can pull it out. And so all we really need to do is put this in here. It comes with 2 screws. This whole kit came on Amazon. It came with both screws, and it came with this wiring harness. The issue with that is it's only got 2 wires, and the 3rd wire is a little ground strap for my horn. So in order to remedy that, I went ahead and I
pulled apart the harness for the factory horn. I D-pinned the wire that goes to the horn, and I'm going to just put that D-pinned wire straight into here, and that'll give me all 3 wires in one plug. I'll have a horn and cruise control, and everything should be set. The only other thing that might be an issue is I think there are 2 different brake switches, so I might need to order a different brake switch, but I won't know until I put everything together. Some people say you don't, some people say you do. I'm about to find out. Deep-inning this was actually kind of a pain in the butt. I ended up destroying the other plug, so I really hope it works. If not, I guess I won't have a horn, and I still might not have cruise control, but at least I'll have the switch. That's kind of nifty. I got it pinned into the plug. You can see there's 3 wires coming out that this plugs into. This goes ahead and just plugs straight into the cruise module down here. And then this goes and hooks back up to the horn. I got everything back together. We got the airbag back on. Horn works. And look at that green light that's showing up on the dash. That tells me that the cruise control button is working. So adding cruise control to a 2nd gen Tacoma is literally just buying a switch. I'm gonna take it for a drive and find out if the brake switch needs switched and if it actually let me set. But if not, I believe that the brake switch just needs to be swapped out for a 4-pin one instead of a 2-pin one. That way you can tell the ECU when you're hitting the brakes so that it can cancel cruise control. And that is a very important part of cruise control. I don't want this to be super sketchy. I want this to be factory. I love factory feeling things. I had what I would consider a wonderfully atrocious idea. I threw the truck on a jack in the rear. I started it, put it in drive, and you just let it idle up. It'll get to about 25. You can set cruise and go up with the cruise control, and you can see it give it gas at just about 25, and it'll wait for it to settle. Look at that. We got cruise control for $20 on Amazon and a little bit of work. That is awesome. The last thing I have to do is cover the ugly hole that was left by me not putting this panel back on. So naturally, fully send it and drill a giant hole in it. And if it looks like crap, I'll order the proper cover. And if not, it'll be fantastic. Hopefully it doesn't look terrible. Now, I wouldn't say that's 10 out of 10, but it is way good enough for me. So I'm not really too worried about that. If it's on, it covers the big gaping hole. It leaves just enough room that I can move it up, down, and do everything I need to do. Our trip is quickly approaching in the Tacoma. We're going through the Southwest, and I'd like to keep my dogs cool. I installed a thermometer to make sure that I can monitor their temperatures. And this is actually an old windshield washer reservoir off of my turbo truck that I removed when I turbocharged it. And I'm gonna be filling this with ice water and pumping ice water through the nozzles to cool my dogs in the bed when we're going through the Southwest, so they have plenty of just ability to not overheat. I know they're dogs, they'll probably be fine, but I wanna make sure they're as comfortable as possible in the back of the truck. We also have the windows open, and we're gonna make sure that they stay comfortable throughout the trip. All right, well, we are finally ready to go. After a bunch of getting things ready, I went ahead and I finished up the sprayer in the back for the dogs to make sure they're good to go. You can see it up there kinda. We got both the dogs back here. We got all our stuff. We got one wheel, we got a longboard, we got water, food, everything we need. So we're about ready to hit the road. Super stoked, and hopefully everything goes smooth. We've put 627 miles on this thing since we got it. Oh, the gas light's on, that's new. We've never seen the gas light. And we're gonna go fill up and hit the road. We made it back from the trip and we had an absolute blast. The Tacoma did awesome. We had so much fun and we filmed a ton of it. If you wanna see some of the drive and the trip and everything we did, let me know down below. That's definitely a video I can make. And also I have a question to ask for you guys. Do you prefer this longer, more in-depth content that takes a bit longer to produce? I know it's been a while since I posted a video. Or would you prefer shorter videos on all my project cars, about 10 to 15 minute videos every week that are gonna be less in depth?
Because if that's what you guys prefer, I can try and make that happen. But if you prefer the more in-depth videos that take a little longer to produce, I can keep doing what I'm doing. Either way, I seriously appreciate all of the support you guys give me. Thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I sure hope to catch you on the next one.